Okay, everyone, welcome to a bird's eye view, wildlife through the lens of photographer Michael Oberman, who is one of our most beloved presenters, no matter what topic he's talking on, whether it's wildlife or a wildlife that he once led in the music industry and wrote a book about it, Fast Forward and Rewind.
Fast forward, play, and rewind.
Fast Forward, Play, and Rewind, which I have, and it's a fabulous book. I highly recommend it. You can look it up and order online. I think we'll put it in the chat later if you'd like to order it. We had hosted Michael a year ago, many of you may remember, and he gave a book talk on that topic, and hopefully he'll share some stories as they occur naturally while he's talking about the wildlife that he spends most of his days with these days, the less complicated wildlife out there in around Maryland and surrounding areas. Before we get started, I just wanted to tell you about a few other events we have coming up, including today is Giving Tuesday. And as you know, SSTCI relies on your generous support, and a donation in any amount will be doubled today with up to $2,500 committed from our board of directors. So I have it in the chat, and I'll post it again. If you would like to make a donation of any amount, it would be greatly appreciated, and it would support well over 120 arts and entertainment programs and events that keep our community connected and creatively engaged. And speaking of creativity, this Friday we have artist and poet Neha Misra leading a creative circle on sacred space, and that's on Friday evening at 7:30 on Zoom. All of our events right now are virtually presented on Zoom. So, and then on Monday, we have another Follow Your Bliss, How Taking the Road Less Traveled Can Lead to Your Best Life panel discussion. We have an array of luminaries from our community who are really lead fascinating lives and will share. And then we have later in the week, on Wednesday, we have Creating Sacred Space Through Art in the studio with artist Suzanne Brennan Furstenberg. She is the artist who did the two installations on the National Mall of the COVID white flags, over 700,000 of them most recently in September. So Suzanne Furstenberg will be joining us on Wednesday, and that's at 7:30. And then on Thursday, many of you know Ray Humberto Rodriguez, who just recently retired as Silver Spring Regional Center Director. And he is going to be giving a talk, Havana's Art and Culture, the Intersection of Architecture, Planning, Preservation, and Economics with Ray Humberto Rodriguez. And that's virtually on Zoom Thursday, December 9th at 7 p.m. Those spaces are filling up quickly. So I encourage you to register, and I will put that in the chat for you to link through to. All of our events are made possible with generous support from Montgomery County, United Therapeutics, the Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County, Maryland State Arts, and many others. And now let's get to the program with Michael Oberman.
Hey, hi.
Hey, Michael. It's wonderful to have you presenting with us. You've been active with SSTCI since I started with the organization. I'm the first executive director. I've been here 10 years, so I've known you about 10 years through our art salon.
It's been a pleasure. How do I get to see everyone on my screen now? I'm seeing is you and me.
So if you click on the view in the upper right,
okay,
and
so
go to gallery,
gallery view. Okay,
but I will have you spotlighted.
Okay.
I'm currently spotlighted only because I'm talking, but I'm going to vanish. I'm going to vamoose and turn it over to you. Michael's biography in general, he's just an amazing photographer. His work has been shown all over the world, and I really encourage you to check out his work on What is your website address, Michael?
Very simple, www.michaelobermanphotography.com.
Right. Okay, great. And there people can find links to your book as well. Okay, great.
Good.
Well, take it away, Michael.
Here I am in Columbia, Maryland, home of Meriwether Post Pavilion and 92 miles of trails, which is where I find a lot of my wildlife. And 3 lakes, actually 4 if you count Centennial Lake, but that's technically Ellicott City and not Columbia. Anyway, my interest in photography goes way back. My brother was a very young reporter at the Washington Star, the Evening Star it was called then. He wrote a column called Top Tunes, which was a weekly interview with a major artist. Lucky Ron, February of 1964 was his first column. And who was it on? The Beatles. He got to interview them at their first concert in the United States. I became his jealous younger brother. And I said, Ron, listen, can you get me a job at the Washington Star? I know I'm only 16. He said, yeah, they need copy boys. So if you're willing to give up your Saturdays and most of your summer vacation, and I did. And it was the best move I ever made. The Star at the time had more Pulitzer Prize winning writers than any paper in the United States. Mary McRory, there's a long list. A number of them ended up leaving the Star and going to the Washington Post because the Star was supporting the war in Vietnam and the Post was not supporting the war in Vietnam. So I was kind of a token hippie there for a while. But the Star wasn't a rabid conservative newspaper. During my time there, we did more music and arts than the Post ever did. We had my column, so from age 16 to 19, I was a copy boy. When my brother left, I took over his column, and from age 19 to 25, I interviewed 300 artists. 100 of those interviews are in my book. It was pretty much do what I want to do. Come in on Friday, pop up my column.
Emma, thank you.
Oh, you went, I wanted to make it see like that.
I'm hearing someone else.
Make it go home.
Let's find that person and mute them, quick. Anyway, my interest in photography came when I was a copy boy, and the best place to hide from my boss, Phil Kelly, was the dark room. He couldn't stand the smell of the chemicals in the dark room, so he never went in there. So I became friends with a number of photographers, and still am friends with the ones that are still alive now. So I'm going to segue out of that to say that the beginning of my photography wasn't wildlife. It was street scenes, it was people. And my first major project was the cover of the Roslyn Mountain Boys' first album. And that was only because Adelphi Records had hired a photographer and her ideas and her work were really bad. Her ideas of a shoot was put the guys in front of Dale Music in Silver Spring and take a photo of them. So that didn't work. So I took the band, I happened to manage them. So I took them to Roslyn, and Roslyn then had a few high rises. And we called them the Roslyn Mountain Boys, ergo the Roslyn Mountains, ergo the Roslyn Mountain Boys. I took the photo in black and white with a Nikon film camera.
Why don't I hear anything?
I'm sorry? Okay. I took it in black and white, and artist extraordinaire Dick Bangham airbrushed it into color. And that was my first real excitement in photography. So we'll fast forward to the year 2007. I had moved to Colombia in the early 2000s. And early on, I was on this little dock area on Lake Kittamaqundi. If any of you have been to Colombia, you know where Clyde's was. Clyde's is no more there. And 15 feet away from me, this big bird landed on the dock, and it was a great blue heron. I thought, oh my gosh, where did he come from? I had no idea that a mile upstream was a rookery with over 40 nests of great blue herons. And I became fascinated by this bird. And learning that Colombia had all the lakes it has and the trails, I got my first digital camera. And my first camera was a Fuji point and shoot. And it was great if a bird was perched. It wasn't so great if a bird was in flight. So I moved up to an early Nikon, a Nikon D70, and kept moving up from there. So now my two main cameras are what's called a Nikon D500, which is what I do my wildlife photography with, and a mirrorless Nikon Z6, which I do landscapes and portraits with. What really got me jazzed was when I started posting my photos publicly, and that was in 2007. And it was on a site most of you probably are aware of, Flickr, F-L-I-C-K-R, no E in it. And I found that people really like them. So I'm going to share a couple of things here, if I can figure out how to do that. Again, go down to share screen. And we'll go over here. And there we are. So the nice thing about Flickr is it keeps statistics. And right now, I've had 5,955,710 views of my photos on Flickr. It's almost 6 million views. That's a lot of people. I wish I had a dime for every view of my photos, but I don't. So it has a graph, and it shows me on any given day how many people have looked at any given photo, and then it shows all 6,000 photos I have up and how many views. The most popular photo happens to be the one in Silver Spring of me, my brother, and David Bowie on my parents' couch in Silver Spring on David's first day in the United States. Okay. But as we go down, you'll see the second favorite shot happens to be a bird. And it was a test shot I took with my Nikon D7100, which was the camera before my D500. And I happened to be walking to the lake with this new camera and new lens. And there between the branches perched over the lake was a black-crowned night heron. And the wind caught these occipital feathers and blew them forward. And it's a pretty good animal headshot. Now, if we go to my photo stream here, for Thanksgiving, this was a wild turkey that I had shot, and I didn't like the background, so I put this artsy kind of background in. And this is a barn owl. I'm sure Steve Land, who's in the audience there, remembers the barn owl at the Al Moon Raptor Center Festival, the Raptor Fest a few weeks ago in Boyd's, Maryland. I tend to take two cameras with me wherever I go now. So I take the Z6 for sites like this with a wide angle lens. And you can see I shoot people too. This is my friend Samira Shurik, who is the belly dancer at Jazz Bar Restaurant here in Colombia, but she is also a yoga instructor, Pilates instructor, and does retreats. She has one coming up in Morocco another one in Costa Rica, etc. And I thought to make it fun, I'll composite a different background. I took her to these ruins in Howard County, and then in the window of the ruins, I did like a little Jurassic Park kind of thing. Okay, this sometimes you go somewhere looking for something and you find something unexpected. That's the beauty of nature photography. So this is at Bombay Hook, which is one of my favorite nature preserves. And it's about 2 hours from Columbia. It's right outside of Dover, Delaware. It's 17,000 acres and it's pristine. And I went there to see what was migrating through. And there were 4 roseate spoonbills there. Now, roseate spoonbills should not be north of South Carolina. And this is Delaware. The other thing about nature photography is you learn that climate change is real. There's a reason a lot of these birds from the south are coming up north. And these roseate spoonbills stayed for at least 6 weeks. They weren't just flying through. Let me go back to the photo stream here for a second. Also, shooting nature. You never know what you're going to see. So seeing a snake fishing, I've shot many snakes on the ground, snakes in water, but this was my first shot of a snake grabbing a fish.
Wow. Michael, can you enlarge that photo if you, click there so we can see better? People are asking.
That's as big as I can
Okay,
get it.
it helps. Thank you. Great.
Yeah, I don't know what you're seeing on your end. It's filling my computer screen. Is it very small when you see it?
No, it's filling most of our screens, I think.
Okay.
It's just not filling the entire screen, but it's okay.
The thing about nature photography is you're going to see birth, you're going to see death, you're going to see blood and gore, but mostly you're going to see beauty. About the only thing I don't like to photograph in nature is spiders. And the only downside of nature for me has been ticks. And I've had 2 tick-borne diseases. One's called Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever. The other is called ehrlichiosis, which is also known as the vegan tick disease, because a high percentage of people who get bitten by the tick and get ehrlichiosis can't eat red meat again. Okay, let's go back here, back to photo stream. So you're out in nature and you might want to shoot birds, but maybe you also want to shoot a lotus. And I have to tell you, if we go down here to my EXIF information, I keep my camera, my D500, set the same way, no matter whether it's a bird on a branch, a bird in flight, or a flower. I shoot shutter priority 1/1000th of a second. My ISO is set on auto. Why do I shoot shutter priority when a lot of nature photographers shoot aperture priority or fully manual? I know that 1/1000th of a second is going to freeze time. And I want to be able to freeze a bird in flight. And I don't want to have to fool with changing the settings all the time. There is one setting that I change, and it's called exposure compensation. That's just knowing what light is going to do to your subject. Okay, so let's go back to photo stream. No offense, hopefully there's no one under the age of 2 in the audience, but this is, I have a lot of shots that I call shit shots. And this is one of them, and it's like silly string. When that osprey was bending down, I thought he was going to take off from the branch, but shooting at 1/1000th of a second, I got his stuff coming out, and it looks like silly string, to me at least. I'm lucky that I have friends who live on the water, and my friends who live on the Magathi River, the same two ospreys come back to a nesting box at their dock every year, and their names are Peaches and Herb. And this is one of the osprey chicks they had this year. Took that on June 17th, 2021. That's another good thing. Because I keep all of my photos in files by date, I'll put specific photos on Flickr to store them. It has the date. And then I know that my osprey shots are in that file marked June 17th. Once again, moving down, you'll see it's 1/1000th of a second. Okay. The other thing, this is another example of wanting to freeze time. So my focus is always on the bird's head. If you focus on the wings, shooting with the telephoto lens, the head's going to be blurry. If you focus on the head, it doesn't matter if the wings blur a little bit. They're in movement. So I started with the cardinal on the branch of this berry tree, and I just shot away at 10 frames a second because I knew he was going to fly. And I captured this image. Okay. You know, nature is just great. Driving down the road and near, I think, Blackwater Wildlife Refuge, I saw this cow just lazing in a field of buttercups. And, you know, what could be nicer? I hate to think that that cow is going to end up on someone's dinner plate or someone's belt or shoes, but you can't change the world. I'm going to move on in a few minutes to explain how I really taught myself to get these images because, well, there's the snake again. This is another shot. Maybe it's a little better in terms of you seeing the fish. You know, I've been told that most people are born either with a fear of snakes or a fear of spiders. I got the spiders. I'm skimming down and seeing, you know, on the road to someplace where I'm going to shoot birds or foxes or squirrels or whatever. I'll stop if I see a scene. If I see a nice looking stone house like this and the sky is kind of cool. And I'll use my other camera, my Z6. Oh, there's my book. There you go. Write this title down on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, etc. I think everyone will find a little bit to like in the book, if not a lot. What we have in Colombia is three types of herons that reside here. The great blue heron resides year round, but then green herons and black-crowned night herons fly in April, build nests, mate, have babies, and by October, they're gone. So they migrate out, but I tend to know where the nests are. And with the telephoto lens, it looks like I'm close. I'm not really close. But I want to capture, this baby was screaming for mom or pop to bring a fish. And then eventually, mom shows up. And if you see, the neck looks bulging. And you'll see in the next photo why. These are 3 of her chicks, and one is biting the beak of the mom, hoping to get something to eat. Maybe it wasn't the next photo. We'll have to find that. Let me see. Back to photo stream. Sunsets are another thing for me. Blackwater Wildlife Refuge outside of Cambridge, Maryland it's a toss-up between Bombay Hook and Blackwater. Sometimes I actually do toss a coin in the air to decide which one I'm going to, but I like to stay for Sunset. And you can see why. I mean, the sunsets there can be spectacular. I always hope for some clouds, because when sun sets and there's some clouds, you're going to get brilliant colors. Or just the feeling, and to be able to see in the water what's above. And it makes, if I don't see a bald eagle on a trip like that, getting a good sunset makes up for it. This was Lake Tahoe. I had been visiting my brother in Reno. But I want to get back and show you, go back and go back, whoops, to statistics. And I'm going to show you the first shot I took of a bird in flight that I was happy with. And I had seen, there are Canada geese everywhere here in Colombia. Canada geese used to migrate back and forth down south, back up to Canada. The main reason they don't any longer is they use the ground as a map. And when big box stores started getting built, they started getting lost, so they would settle where there's water. So I knew that Canada geese like to go to Centennial Lake, and I set myself up on a hill. If I had to do this shot over again, I would straighten the horizon. But this shot really shows the structure of that goose in flight. And it became a very important shot for me because Fish and Wildlife Service spotted it. And it's now an identifier in 7 national parks on kiosks as to what a Canada goose looks like. Let me see. I want to go back to Lisa. Are you there? Hello, Lisa. Are you muted? Lisa, are you with us?
Sorry, yes, I'm
Okay.
here.
I want to go back to see the people that I'm speaking to for a second. So what do I do here? Hit stop share?
Yeah, if you stop the share, it should show everyone again,
Okay.
since we're in gallery mode, right?
Right, we are.
Mhm.
You know, at this point, let me take some questions from people, because as I move on, there are going to be other questions, and you may forget what you want to ask me now, if there is anything you want to ask me.
Okay.
I
So-
see Ken Roseman raising his hand.
Did you want to stop the share so that we can see?
Wait.
Oh, no, you did. Okay. I was on your website, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so Ken is here. Let's see.
Okay, Ken wants to say something, so I think you're gonna have to unmute your mic.
Yeah, he can unmute himself.
Okay,
Should I go?
yeah.
All right. The question I would ask you, well, hi again. We've known each other a long time. The question I would ask you is, you're doing a lot of nature photography now. Has it motivated you to become more of an environmental activist? And the other thing, of course, is, are you doing any, music photography these days?
Yes, and some. yes to the environmental activists, and that happens all the time because I've been in a fight with the Columbia Association, which pretty much controls the open spaces in the lakes here. And, you know, I may piss some people off by saying this, but I'm anti-fishing, period. If you have to fish to feed your family, that's one thing, but sport fishing, catch and release fishing, to me is cruelty to animals. And the problem we have here in Columbia is the lakes have fish. The lakes have smallmouth bass, they've got other fish. And Wild Lake in particular, which is my favorite lake, the fishermen snag their lines in trees. And when they can't get them down, which is 90% of the time, they cut the lines. And what happens? Birds, butterflies, etc., get caught in the monofilament. I have photos of a Baltimore Oriole hanging dead from monofilament. A few weeks ago, I got a call on a Sunday morning, Michael, there's a great blue heron tangled in monofilament at Wild Lake. So I went over there. It was a Sunday and wildlife rescue places weren't open. So we called the fire department. And engine company number 10 sent 6 guys out with an inflatable boat and they cut the heron loose. I took photos of the whole thing, and we have a new president of Columbia Association here, Lakey Boyd. And I sent Lakey, well, kind of a nice email with those photos attached. And I said, Ms. Boyd, I would like to introduce myself. I've been photographing wildlife in Columbia for 20 years, and I've been fighting to make this lake a non-fishing lake, and you're new. And I hate to lay this on you, but these are the photos, the taxpayers' money paid to have a fire department come out to save this heron. What are you going to do? Now, I'm going to back up a little bit. In 2015, I had the same talk with the heads of CA, and we did a little walk around the lake, and they promised all these things were going to happen. And not a damn thing happened. I thought they said, oh, we'll take care of it. A great bumper sticker for them, because the bumper sticker for Columbia used to be choose civility. A great bumper sticker for CA would be choose lip service. So I said in my email to Lakey Boyd, we can walk around the lake and try to get some of these problems fixed. Or I can send these photos and the dead Baltimore Oriole and the dead cedar waxwing and dead this and dead that to the Baltimore Sun and the Washington Post, both papers of which I have friends writing for. And I got an immediate response, set a date, and I walked around the lake with her. This was a month ago. Haven't heard a thing back. She promised a lot of stuff. One thing she promised was that we have 4 floating islands in Wild Lake, because when the lake was dredged, it became too deep for wading birds to fish. So they used the floating islands to catch fish to swim by. One of the floating islands, they're anchored to the bottom. They float, but they're tethered, had broken loose and was up against the shoreline. And I pointed it out to her. It's breaking up. Eventually the lake's going to ice over and it's going to destroy this floating island. Oh, we'll take care of it in a couple days. Well, a month later, it hasn't been taken care of. So, give you another story about wildlife. A friend of mine working at, I'm sure most of you have heard of Patuxent Wildlife Research Center. Some of you have walked the open tracts and seen great wildlife, and you know about the program they had to save whooping cranes, etc. I got a call from a friend of mine who worked there. She said, Michael, I want to get you into the restricted area on Sunday. Bring your cameras. Though it says no trespassing, I work here and I'm going to be getting you in. And it was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. They have 40 American kestrels, which are beautiful small raptors, in 2-foot by 2-foot wooden boxes, and they're poisoning all 40 with rodenticide. I'll get back to why in a second. They're doing the same thing to eastern screech owls. And they had a house with 1 foot by 1 foot wire cages with 100 Japanese quail. All of their feet were bleeding from walking on wire cages, and they were depleting their calcium by laying eggs all the time. This was blowing my mind away. It was like, I hate to use the word concentration camp, but it felt like a concentration camp for birds. So I took a lot of photos, and embedded in my photos is my name and my copyright and the settings of my camera. I went into each one and took all that information off, so no one would know who took these photos, because I sent them to Dr. French, the head of Patuxent Wildlife Research Center. I said, Dr. French, you guys have been doing these rodenticide studies for over 20 years. You've been killing 40 American kestrels with dosages of rodenticide that are 1,000 times more what would kill a mouse. So if a raptor comes down and eats a poisoned rodent, and it's got a little bit of rodenticide in it, maybe the raptor will get sick, maybe not. But these dosages were off the charts. I said, why do you keep doing this? I sent him the photos, the quail, the screech owls. And he wrote me back, first of all, no, Mr. Oberman, where'd you get these photos? And unfortunately, he did his research, or had someone do his research, and saw that one of my Facebook friends happened to be a woman who worked at the refuge. So he knew he couldn't fire her. Well, he's gone. He's gone. Dr. French is gone. They're still doing the rodenticide studies, but what they've done is they've put video cameras up all over the place. So if someone like me tries to get in again, they won't. And I sent all this to PETA, Defenders of Wildlife, the Nature Conservancy, the Baltimore Sun, and the Washington Post. I never heard back from anyone. I do know from people who work at Patuxent that a lot of flack went down there over these programs. So yeah, I'm an environmentalist, but I'm a nature photographer first. But being a nature photographer, I see things. I see birds hurt by things. I see careless fishermen, and I can tell you right now that 99% of the people who live in Columbia don't fish. The fishermen that I see are coming from Dundalk and Jessup and Elk Ridge and other areas using our lakes and leaving their trash behind. So anyway, to answer that question, in terms of music photography, I did the cover of the Seldom Scenes album, Long Time Seldom Seen, which was for Smithsonian Folkways Records. And I also did the brochure that went inside the cover, and it was the 40th anniversary of the Seldom Scene being together. And the funny thing is, their first year together, the only bluegrass group that I ever wrote about in the Washington Star was the Seldom Scene. The only one left in the Seldom Scene by the time we got to the 40th anniversary was Ben Eldridge, the banjo player. And it was exciting. It was exciting to see in Bluegrass Limited magazine a review of the album where they said, not only is the music spectacular, but the photos are amazing. So thank you, Bluegrass Unlimited. The pandemic has kept me away from venues with musicians. Outdoors, I'm okay. Indoors, I'm not.
Yeah.
We just had the Cellar Door reunion at the Hamilton, which was packed. Mark Seagraves wanted me to speak at that since I worked at the Cellar Door. I took a pass. Richard Harrington from the Post took a pass. Keith Crokin, who worked at the Cellar Door, took a pass. We're all older.
Right.
We don't want to be
Yeah.
near a stage where musicians' spittle is coming out, and seeing the videos of the event, it looked fabulous. Bill Danoff doing Take Me Home Country Roads, part of which was written in the dressing room at the Cellar Door. with John Denver. A lot of cool stuff, but I'm not ready to take that risk. And now with a new variant, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's Ken's question. Anybody else have a question for me? No.
Steve had one.
Oh, Steve.
Lan.
Yes. Steve, unmute yourself. There you are.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Steve.
Well, my question was more of a technical one, and that is, how do you stay in focus on birds in flight?
Two things. Practice and the fast shutter speed. If you pan with the bird's head and just keep shooting, if you get that first shot in the sequence, unless the bird suddenly takes a U-turn, you're going to get the entire sequence. Start with bigger birds. Start with geese. They're easy to follow. You usually can see them coming in their V formation and start shooting and follow them into their landing. The other thing you can do, let's see, I'll bring up some photos. Do you have a bird feeder?
No.
Oh, you're in DC and you're in a condo now, right?
Yeah, pigeons. I could get lots of pigeon shots, but that's about it.
Well, for those of you who have bird feeders, I have a series that I call Coffee with the Birds. And there's a bird feeder outside the kitchen window. And literally every morning, we get a variety of birds, and you can catch the flight shots, you can catch eating shots, you can catch the pecking order. And the funny thing is, the Washington Post did a story the other day of the pecking order of birds at feeders. If you saw that,
Yeah.
it starts with the American crow and it goes down to the little chickadee. We don't get crows at our feeder. Occasionally we'll get starlings, and they're nasty birds. They're kind of an invasive species. I teach photography, I teach nature photography. In an hour, I can teach someone how to nail birds in flight. But you can probably do it yourself. The other thing is, I never use a tripod. I own a tripod. I don't use them. They get in the way. You know, all of a sudden the eagle flies directly over my head. What am I going to do? I'm on a tripod. No, my camera is not light. In total, it's close to 8 pounds of gear, but I have a harness that puts the weight in the middle of my back and not on my neck. And that harness allows the camera to hang free and for me to pick up my other camera and use it too. You probably saw that at Al Moon. Steve and I have a connection through Steve's sister, Barbara, who's a great singer and sang in a band called the Mystery Band, which was kind of the band that formed after Claude Jones, which was a band I managed, broke up. And we ran into each other at the Al Moon Raptor Fest. And that was a real treat.
It was.
I'm looking through the list here of people who, I'm seeing a lot of people I recognize, some I don't. Hang on. Oh, Tom Marvel, I know, and I love your comics, Tom, thanks. And Warren Hoffman is great. Warren shares a lot of my posts on Facebook. You can also send me a Facebook friend request and see what I post there every day. And sometimes for some people, it might be a little too political, but if it is, just say goodbye. Let me get back. Actually, Lisa, I'm gonna.
Yes, I think Michelle Holzman was asking a question.
Oh, okay.
in the
You're
chat.
probably-
Oh, Michelle, are you ready?
Oh,
to-
okay, I'm back. Hi, I was just wondering, I no longer really have a camera. I just have the iPhone.
Yeah.
Is it, is it possible to do anything with an iPhone?
You can make phone calls, you can get on the internet, and there are iPhone photographers who only shoot with an iPhone.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And you can Google that, iPhone photographers, and there's some amazing stuff. It tends to be more arty, sometimes abstract. You're not going to get birds in flight very often with an iPhone.
I have tried.
It's hard. First of all, most professional cameras or semi-professional cameras have image stabilization. So I don't use a tripod, but my hands are moving. So why are my photos so sharp? Because in one of my cameras, the Z6 has 5 axes built into the camera of image stabilization. And then my D500, the lens on that is image stabilized. All I can say is you can start off with an inexpensive camera and an inexpensive telephoto lens and have a ball. You don't have to spend $10,000. You can get a Nikon 70 to 300 millimeter G lens for under $200. You can start off with a beginning DSLR and you'll get great shots. I mean, that shot you saw of the goose was not with a $3,000 camera or a $3,000 lens. That was in 2007. So do I ever use my phone for, I don't have an iPhone, I've got an Android. Yeah, if I'm in a pinch and I'm with friends and I want to do a selfie or take a picture of a friend, I don't want to be schlepping my camera everywhere. Though at times I wish I had. If Zapruder didn't have his 8mm film camera when Kennedy was assassinated, we wouldn't have the Zapruder film. So, carrying gear with you is a good idea. I've started to carry some really good binoculars in my glove compartment because they'll help me spot something that I want to end up taking a picture of. So the answer is the cameras in iPhones and Androids have gotten really good, but they're not meant to be wildlife cameras.
Okay.
If you go to some savanna in Africa and there are a bunch of cheetahs at a watering hole and they're not jumping around, you'll get some nice pictures. Well, I don't think you're going to a savanna in Africa anytime soon.
No, I've already been there. And I did have my Nikon.
The other thing is there are a lot of camera rental places online where you can, let's say you're going on a trip and you want to rent a good camera. They ship it to you in a hard case with the lens and the batteries and everything you need. And then you return it to them 3 days, 5 days, or 7 days later. And instead of spending $8,000 on gear, you've spent maybe $300, but you've got great pictures from your trip to Morocco.
Right. Yeah. Well, I do actually still have my Nikon, but I haven't used it in probably 12 years. So I have no idea.
Well, is it a film camera or a DSLR?
It is a film camera.
Well, the other thing is, look, I shot film for years. Then you had to go send it to a lab.
Yeah.
And depending on whether you're in a light area or a dark area, you had to change the ASA, the film you're using, etc. I can shoot 3,000 shots with my camera without changing batteries, and I can change all the things that you would need to do in a dark. It's like it doesn't cost me any more to shoot 3,000 shots than to shoot one shot. But with film, it does.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, I was just curious because I've
Thank
never
you.
been able to take any good photos with this phone, with the iPhone. It just doesn't work.
Well, go online and look at some of the iPhone photographers.
And thanks for the suggestions.
You're welcome.
And SSTCI, thank you, Michelle. SSTCI will have another photography workshop for DSLs in the spring. So Carol Plassic was the next person who had a question, if we could.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. I'm sorry I came in late, but I just had a question. I didn't know if you had any experience or had gone on the trips Maryland offers to Poplar Island.
No, I have not.
There, because they had, I went on one this year. It's some of them are focused on bird watchers, and we saw 8 or 10 bald eagles in a group doing amazing.
Well, there are a lot of places, there are a lot of group trips, and there are camera clubs, there are birding clubs. You know, we've got the Howard County Birders, we got the Maryland Birders, et cetera. There's always something going on. And if you want to see eagles, Conowingo Dam, where Route 1 crosses the Susquehanna River, this time of year, there could be 50 eagles, there could be 200 bald eagles there.
Really?
I've been told that it's been very light this season.
I just thought I'd mention it because it was really an amazing experience to be out there.
Well, you know, that's and you know, in a pandemic, and you know, what better thing to do than to get out in nature? I'm judging a contest for the Montebello Condo Association in Alexandria, Virginia. They asked me to judge their yearly photo contest. And they sent me through Google Photos 105 entries. I thought, oh my God, this is going to be dreadful. And it was. It was a lot of shots of leaves and trees, out of focus this. There were maybe 5 good shots that I picked as winners. But everybody's a winner because they're outside. You're getting outside, you're not in a crowded indoor place, and you're enjoying nature.
So Michael, I had a question for you. I'll bring my video on too, so people can see that it's Lisa asking this question. And it's a very simple question. What are your favorite animals to photograph and why? And once we get the birds out of the way, what other animals are your favorites? Because I mean, I know birds are much more abundant to capture on film.
Well, I've got to tell you that the great blue heron is probably my favorite bird because I can go out every single day and see one. And the Ontario Science Center in Toronto licensed 6 great blue heron shots and took them on a 5-year tour of US and Canadian museums. A shot I have of a great blue heron flipping a crawfish in the air is on permanent display at the Utah Museum of Natural History. So I'm pretty much known for my herons, and my first solo show, which was in 2007, was called The Nature of Wad Lake, and the invitation was a sunset shot. I'll try to pull that up in a few minutes, of a great blue heron. I like raptors a lot, and because you know, with a regular bird, with a little bird, it's fun. They get a seed and they eat it. With a hawk, they go for a squirrel in a tree, they get it. You know, some people don't like this, but the fact is raptors are called raptors from the word rapier, okay, sword. They use their talons to kill. So it's almost instant. They grab that squirrel, and with 200 pounds of pressure per square inch, they kill the squirrel. So I have a lot of raptor squirrel shots on my site. And that's not to say that I don't like a cardinal or I don't like a peacock. I like to see living things, and birds fascinate me. People say, why do I shoot? Aren't you a birder? And I say, no. You don't keep a life list, which birders do. I say, no, my life list is on my hard drives. It's my photos. And I would just as soon shoot a fox as a sparrow. I would just as soon photograph a sunset as a dark alley. It's whatever is there, but what presents itself in nature more than any other thing is birds. You know, maybe you go outside of your house and you see a lot of squirrels. And if you have a bird feeder, you're going to see a lot of squirrels because there is no such thing as a squirrel-proof bird feeder. Somehow they find a way to get the seed out of it. But I would say herons, and I wish it's phenomenal that a bird that I love, the yellow-crowned night heron, nests under the Jones Falls Parkway in Baltimore, right where a bridge goes over it. And you can go there in nesting season and see these beautiful birds mating, having babies, watch the babies grow up. It's thrilling to me, like almost nothing else, because the life cycle is so quick. The eggs hatch with the green herons. Within 3 to 4 weeks, those babies are doing something called branching, which is they're walking out on branches, waiting for the mama and papa to come feed them. And then pretty soon they start flying from branch to branch. And in a few more weeks, they're flying. So you get this life cycle of from egg to baby to almost adult. And you don't have to wait 7 years for your kid to grow up. Ken, were you raising your hand there? Or were you,
Yeah,
was that just one finger that came up? Okay.
no, I was. I'm listening to all your talk about. Man, you got to do a book of these nature things too.
No, you know what? Nature photography books end up on the remainder table. It's like the Seinfeld episode of the coffee
Yes.
table book, and it's really expensive to do color plates. Backbeat Books would not do the photos in my book, and there are 37 photos in the book in color. So no, and I'm happy I got my music book out, and I'm happy to have had some success, at least with galleries and museums, in terms of my photography. I don't suggest that anyone try to become a nature photographer to make a living. Except to me, there are 3 tiers of nature photographers. There's your Uncle Charlie, who goes out and he photographs a squirrel jumping out of a tree. And his wife, Rose, says to him, "Charlie, that's a great photo. Take it to the Maryland State Fair and enter it in a contest." And Charlie enters it and he comes in 8th or 5th or 3rd. Then you've got the tier that I'm in, where my photos in a gallery sell anywhere from $300 to $500, $700. And then you've got the tier way above me, the Annie Leibovitz tier, the $100,000 a photo tier, the Peter Lick tier. Now, the most expensive, the highest priced nature photo sold about 5 years ago for $6 million. And I can tell you right now, if you had handed a decent camera to a blind person and told them, press the shutter button for 5 minutes, they would have come out with a photo as good as that. And it was a slot canyon. I don't know if it was in Utah or what, and the sun was coming down. The reason it sold for $6 million is Peter Lick has a bunch of galleries set up to just sell his work. And he's got these high pressure salesmen who, wealthy people on Rodeo Drive, come in and say, "How much is that?" "Oh, that photo is only 47,000, but let me tell you what, in 5 years it'll be worth 300,000. And they buy it, and they buy it. And to give you an example, I don't know if you guys are aware, and this is slightly off track, but not really. There are a lot of auction houses out there. There's an auction house called Heritage Auctions. And recently they had an auction of Nintendo video games, mostly Mario Brothers. and a still sealed Super Mario Brothers go-kart cartridge that should have cost somebody $10 sold for $1,570,000. What that was it was a manufactured bullshit auction. They had shill bidders bidding stuff up, and now they're selling this stuff to stupid people. I call it the Beanie Baby people, the people who thought they were going to make a fortune on Beanie Babies, and some of them did. It's like getting in at the beginning. It's a pyramid scheme, and auction houses are doing this. If you think you're bidding against John Doe, you're not. You're bidding against the house, and they'll bid it up to reserve price. And the same thing goes with photography. And coincidentally, I went to high school with Annie Leibovitz, and I was in my 12th grade art class, and Annie was in 10th grade, and she was only at Northwood for that 1 year. Her father was in the Foreign Service. At the time, she was known as Anna Lou Leibovitz. And then eventually, after high school, she moved to California and started shooting for Rolling Stone, and now she's one of the world's most famous photographers. Unfortunately, I think it went to her head. I went up to her to Corcoran opening for her work, and I said, "Hey, Anna Lou, you're met," and it was like, "Oh my God, I'm not Anna Lou, I'm Annie Leibovitz." And okay, all right, listen, let me move on. Lisa, I want to go back, let's see, to, should I hit leave or no, share screen again? Let me go
Share
back.
screen, right.
Share screen, and going back there, and then I'm going to bring up something else. So albums. I have my photos broken down on Flickr into sets. So I keep track of views, but there's a part of Flickr called Explore Interestingness, where out of the 10 to 15 million photos uploaded a day, they pick the top 500. And my photos have been in the top 500, 668 times. One of them, Happy the Hippo, was the #1 photo on Flickr for a year. But let me bring this up and I'll show you the photo that, this was kind of interesting. Every summer before they dredged Walled Lake, there was a war between the red-winged blackbirds and the great blue herons. So I covered that war. I was a war correspondent. There were no major injuries. These red-winged blackbirds are very territorial. They nest under bushes surrounding the lake, and they don't like the herons. So don't ask me why, but the London Daily Mirror, which used to have something called Page 3 Girls, which was topless women, photos of topless women on page 3, they found this set and they licensed that set of the war between them, and that was their page 3 set for a week. My heron versus blackbird, I don't know. Yeah, it happens. Let me go back to the album. So I mentioned, well, you can see this, the toughest flight shots to get, Steve, are the ones where the bird is coming right at you. And because how do you focus on it? Well, I focus at the head of that bird and I fire off 10 shots a second. Now realize that 30 frames a second is video. So you're really shooting fast. Back to album. I want to find some of the museum. I mean, dogs, I love dogs. This woman at Walled Lake threw a small stick into the woods. And her dog came back with this log. You know, I was there, I saw it, I photographed it. A lot of these photos were before I really understood post-processing, which is so important. So if I had this to do over again, the head of the eagle wouldn't be as blown out. You can see the fish down here that the eagle is going for. This takes a lot of practice to nail a shot like that. But when you get home and you realize you've nailed it, it's a good feeling. That was, you can see the fish right behind the eagle's wings in its talons. And the look, the intense look on that eagle. Nobody is taking this fish from me. Okay. Pelicans are a lot of fun. Unfortunately, you don't see them very much up here. Let me go down. This was an interesting story, and this goes back to what Ken asked me about environmental stuff. This is the eagle coming in, facing us, is a juvenile. Excuse me, the heron is a juvenile great blue. This is one of its parents. My friend Carl Ardo and I rescued this heron that had a one of those 6-pack toppers that hold the cans in, and it was caught on it and it couldn't eat, and we knew it was going to be hawk food pretty soon. So we took his kayak out and we got the heron. We covered it with a sheet and we got it to a rescue place. And then 2 days later, when it was deemed healthy, it was let loose up here and it flew. And this is called the reunion. And this was in my second gallery show, and the president of the, not the Columbia Association, the Columbia Foundation has that hanging in her wall. Let's see. The other thing is, people say to me, oh my God, you must spend hours and hours and hours getting these shots. And what I have to say is, you don't have to do that. If you know the time of day when animals are going to be out, if you know that birds don't like to fly at noon on a very hot summer day, you don't go out at noon on a very hot summer day. This is kind of interesting because this is a red-shouldered hawk, and it had been in a tree up by Clyde's when Clyde's was still around. This is a very old shot of mine, one of my favorite shots. And it was eating a mouse. And I saw it was going to fly to the lake. And red-shouldered hawks are not known as fishing birds. But look at this. This is the hole in the water. That's how fast I was shooting, that the fish just came out of, snagged by the hawk. And to get a better view, I cropped it. There's a crazy shot I got because the hawk flew to a piling on the pier to eat the fish. And I got a shot at an angle where he's got the fish, he's ready to chomp on it. And in the background is the restaurant Sushi Sono. And, you know, I made up a little story to go along with that, you know, the sushi restaurant gets their fish from this hawk, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Back down. So you see a lot of heron shots here, and boy, do great blue herons look different when they turn and face you. This is another one of my favorite Canada goose shots. This was from the same hill, a little lower, but you can see the musculature of this bird. I mean, I don't think I could watch somebody goose hunting. I can't watch somebody duck hunting, etc. But I also know that duck hunters, waterfowl hunters, most of them are conservationists. They contribute a lot to the species, to the environment, etc. I can't say the same for fishermen.
Yeah, do you know that there's a duck stamp which is used
Yeah.
for the licenses? I actually used to work in museum evaluation, worked on the duck stamp exhibit at the Postal Museum about 15 years
my
ago.
duck photos have been used by people who've painted for the duck stamp. You get $50,000 if your painting is chosen to be on the duck stamp. I would have gotten 10% of that if they used it, but they didn't use those. C'est la vie. This up at Conowingo Dam, there are also these wonderful black vultures. Now, they look small because of this light, but this dam light is huge. And to me, the vultures are like the Rolling Stones of the bird world. I mean, look at this is Keith Richards over here. I mean, look at that face. And what people don't realize, and they find Exelon Energy, which owns the dam, which runs the dam, and has been great to photographers by building this space where you can photograph the bald eagles. They finally put up signs because when you leave your car, the vultures will land on your windshield and eat the rubber off of your windshield wipers. Seen it a dozen times. I told this woman, she was leaving her pickup truck, and I said, listen, you better watch, you're gonna lose. And not only did they start eating her windshield wiper blades, they started pecking at her tires. Now, somebody told me that the rubber in those things has fish oil, and I never Googled that to find out whether that was true or not. I like to photograph the moon. It's really hard to get a good shot of the full moon, but when there's not quite a full moon, with my camera and without using a telescope, but just aiming it up at the moon, I will take it with 20 different exposures, handheld, and then you get to see the craters. It's amazing. You realize there are craters on the moon, but you take a camera and you photograph it and see it. It's a whole different experience. And there were no attachments to my camera that made that photo any better than it would have been had I taken it with a telescope. Now, let's see.
Amazing. What kind of camera do you use, Michael?
That was with my on Nikon at the time. That was a Nikon D300, which now is the Nikon D500. I use an 80 to 400 millimeter lens, which I have rigged to shoot at 780 millimeters. I don't shoot with a big prime lens. So like a 600 millimeter Nikon prime lens costs as much as a Honda Civic. I mean, I'd rather have the car than the lens. And it's not that much better than my $3,000 lens. Okay, you can get an idea of.
Where did you get those otters?
You mean these prairie dogs?
Oh, they're prairie. Oh, I see. Okay. Right. Where did you shoot that?
In New Mexico, and I labeled that we don't need no stinking orthodontists out here on the prairie.
So cute. So your most popular photo outside of birds is what kind of animal? The hippos?
Happy the hippo. We'll eventually get to that one, and that this is an interesting story. I did a series called Birds on Chains. So there were these chains at Lake Kittamakundi, and oftentimes birds would land on them, And I get a letter from the head of the Norwegian state police, a letter from Norway saying, we would like to use your Birds on Chain series on our graduation certificates from police school. And we'd also like to use them on our traffic tickets. And I said, why? And he said, because in Norway, the police are known as the birds who hold the chain of humanity together. And boom, I've got copies of the graduation certificate in the Norwegian language with my photo. It's, you know, and why does that happen? And why do I keep posting on Flickr? Because I use keywords. So I will tag my photo, sparrow, sparrows, bird, birds, birds on chain, chain, Norway, Norwegian, chains, nature, etc. Because publishers, when they go to a site like Flickr, will put in what they're looking for in keyword search. We're looking for a clown riding in a Camaro in Hyattsville. So if I had taken a photo of a clown riding in a Camaro in Hyattsville, I would have tagged it clown, Camaro, Hyattsville, asshole, I hate clowns, etc. And sorry for the language, Lisa. I know that's a little raw. Anyway, so it's really weird because most of my photos that have been licensed, I have a photo in a book called Why Men Make Bad Pets. And it was a publishing company in Canada that did a tag search and found a photo of mine that they liked. Licensing fees do not pay my rent. You know, mostly they're in the $200 to $300 range. The Ontario Science Center came up with $2,000 to license the photos. I would have given them to them for free because they were touring major museums for 5 years. Okay, let's see. This was my favorite shot of that series of the war because check this out. The heron has speared a fish and the red-winged blackbird has attached itself to the heron's tail feather as the heron's running through the water. I mean, what more could a nature photographer ask for? Especially in a series that's called The War Between the Red-Winged Blackbirds and the Great Blue Herons. Okay. All right, this picture here was in my first gallery show, solo gallery show. That's a Eurasian eagle owl. There was one at the Owl Moon Raptor Festival. They look a lot like great horned owls, except their eyes are oranger and the great horned owl eyes are yellowish and the eagle owl is bigger. This is the only owl photo that I've got on Flickr that was just total luck. I was walking down the street in Baltimore and there was a woman walking up the street with a Eurasian eagle owl on her shoulder. And I stopped there and I said, excuse me, may I photograph your owl? And she said, yes. You know, it was like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode. You know, I said, what are you doing with this owl? She said, oh, I run the Carey Murray Nature Center in Baltimore, and I'm going to an elementary school to give a talk on owls. Boom. So Liz Bobo, our county executive at the time, bought that photo. It's framed and hanging in her living room. You never know. You know, this was in New Mexico, and I had never seen this bird before, so I had to look it up. I took a photo. This is in a nature area called Bosque del Apache. You don't expect there to be wetlands in New Mexico, but there's a gorgeous wetland called Bosque del Apache. And this is called a Clark's grebe. Usually when you see the red eye, you know they've got night vision. Or I'll see this. This is another one. I saw this animal swimming in Centennial Lake, and it was all wet. And I took shots of it, and I didn't know what it was. Was it a beaver? Was it an otter? And then it came on shore, and I took this shot. And I sent it to a friend with Fish and Wildlife. He said, "Where did you take that shot?" I said, "Centennial Lake." He said, "That's a wild mink. We haven't had wild minks in this part of Howard County in 30 years. So you just never know. I mean, I love this shot. I would have liked it better if he wasn't in so much
Wow.
shadow, but c'est la vie.
Amazing. So they're returning to their natural habitat?
I wouldn't say returning. I don't think they've seen another one since. So, you know,
Right.
you never know. Did someone have a mink as a pet? Did it escape from a mink farm, or was it really a wild mink? This is at Brook, this next
Wow.
one, 11, call it 11 turtles, because this was at Brookside Gardens in one of the ponds. And I just thought it was neat to see these turtles all lined up. Very peaceful, and not a snapping turtle among them.
Nice. Are they one family, do you know?
I don't think so.
Hmm.
This is one of the most beautiful ducks in the world, as long as it's not on a plate. This is a mandarin duck.
Wow.
I think what I'll do is get out of this album and go to, this was a shot I liked. I happened to be in Annapolis, and this woman with the horse and buggy was just going by, and I just took a shot. You know, I don't know her. I never asked her name. I'll never see her again. This is how many years ago? This was in 2006 with my Nikon D200. Let me go up here for a second and get back to albums. We'll switch to a different album, and I'll show you why I love rap. Well, this is Happy the Hippo. And he was at the Washington Zoo, and they moved him, damn it. But he surfaced just long enough for me to get a good gum shot. And that shot was used by a dentist on his reminder cards to get teeth cleaned.
Well, Linda Keenan here is sharing in the chat that she knew Happy the Hippo when she was a docent at the National Zoo.
Wait, I'm not, hang on, Lisa, you're gonna have to start over. I can't understand you.
So Linda Keenan,
Yeah.
it was a docent at the National Zoo. She's sharing in the chat.
Oh,
And she knew Happy the Hippo.
oh my God.
Linda,
Linda,
Can you
where
tell
are
us-
you? And how did you let Happy leave the zoo? I guess mum's the word on that.
No, he
she's
was part
unusual.
of the species survival plan. And so he left to breed with a female elsewhere.
Well, after the breeding's done, bring Happy back.
They needed more space for the elephants. That was the other part of the story. So
Okay.
the giraffes and the hippos all left that building.
So what happened to him? Do you know?
Yeah, he was sent to a different zoo, and that's where he still is. I can't remember which zoo it was now.
He lived happily ever after.
Yes.
Yeah, hippos are great.
So this was my bald eagle shot that was on Google for 7 years. If you did a search for bald eagle fishing, this came up #1. Times have changed. Once again, I've redone this photo with post-processing, but I leave the original up here on Flickr. And Eagles come in to fish with their talons out like that. And the cool thing was I was 75 yards away and I nailed the shot. You can see the points of his talons and you can see the fish. The thing to know about Conowingo Dam is there's an 800 number you can call and there's a recording. And on the recording, they tell you the next day what dam gates are going to be open, whether the large ones will be open or the small ones, what side of the river. That'll give you an idea of whether you should make the drive up there, because when the dam gates are open, the fish come through stunned and they're close to the surface of the water and the eagles really have a heyday.
Mm.
So there are things you learn as a nature photographer. I know that if I call that number and no dam gates are going to be open, I'm not driving an hour and 10 minutes from home to try to photograph eagles. Come on, back to album list. Okay. Oh, just to show you the great blue heron shot that was the cover of my first show. The invitation is this one. It landed right at the golden hour. And when I say golden hour, I didn't change any color in this photo. That's the sun setting on Wild Lake and the eagle just resplendent with its wings out and just owning the lake, ownership of the lake. I'll take this photo over almost any other great blue heron photo shot I've shot. I'd like to get another one like this. I mean, I guess I have gotten others because I've got a whole set of great blue heron shots here. Oh, I know what I want to do. I want to move this. How do I, there we go. Okay.
Michael, while
Yeah.
you're doing that, you had mentioned in that last heron shot that you didn't adjust any of the colors. So my question, in the majority of your photos, is that common that you do or
Oh my
don't adjust the
God.
color?
I right now, I would say I'm not making color adjustments or saturation adjustments on 70% of my photos.
Okay.
But when the light's not quite right, sometimes I have to do that. So I'm walking along the shores of Wild Lake and voila, a great blue heron walks right by me with a snake. Unfortunately, the heron flew, I've got those shots too, to the other side of the lake and ate the whole snake, swallowed the whole thing. I love this photo. And there used to be a restaurant in DC called Dominique's, and my parents took me there one night and I got to eat rattlesnake salad. And yes, it tastes like chicken. Okay, back to search. Let me get to, oops, you. It's easy for me to go through these photos on Flickr because on my own website, I don't have them tagged like this. So raptors, eagles, hawks, osprey, and owls. It's running a little slow, but there's a story behind this series. This is the juvenile Cooper's hawk. And there is a path that I take. And next to that path, let me see how I get that. Let me go back down here, is a creek. And there was this tree falling across the creek. And every day when I would pass it, there were more talon marks on it. So this was like a detective shoot. I figured one day I'm going to see the raptor that's making those marks. And the day I saw it, it was this juvenile Cooper's hawk. And because I was separated by a creek from it, it allowed me to take 700 photos. And the background, the blurred brown background is the woods behind it. That's called bokeh when you get that blurred background. When you're using a telephoto lens and shooting something close to you, the background blurs. And that's what I want in most of my shots, unless I'm doing a landscape shot. I'll show you a couple more photos of this guy because he really is, well, you can see from this photo why they call a red-tailed hawk red-tailed. You don't often get to see them spread the feathers like that. This is another red-tailed hawk. With our friend the squirrel. See, squirrels build nests out of leaves in trees, and then winter comes, and the leaves have fallen off the trees, but the squirrels' nests are like a buffet for raptors. So if you know that, you know, eventually you're going to see a raptor getting a squirrel, and I see it more than eventually. So let me see. This is, I'll show you a couple more shots of that juvenile Cooper's hawk. It's just beautiful. He just put on a show for me. And the intensity. And it's like, people say, did you take that in a studio? Is that a backdrop? Is that a real bird? Is it taxidermy? No, I don't take shots of taxidermied animals. That would be a lot easier at times. Now, I could have shot in this shot the hawk eating the squirrel, but I didn't. Instead, I focused on the one drop of blood coming off its beak. And that one drop of blood tells the whole story. I mean, these are not vegetarian animals. These animals hunt prey, and their prey can be smaller birds, their prey can be squirrels, rabbits, etc. Here's one flying at me with a squirrel in its talons. So I know what of I speak when it comes to raptors and squirrels. So you see some of the 700 shots of this. You know, it was like, hey, would you spread your wings that way? Hey, would you pretend you're a matador? Hey, can I do a headshot? Now this was a long range shot of a bald eagle. That's a squirrel carcass. He had eaten almost the whole squirrel, and Wild Lake was frozen over. And the eagle was trying to claw through the ice to get a drink of water because squirrels are mighty salty tasting. I was very lucky also in that there, I guess I'll come to a shot of that soon. I do love ospreys, and here's a fact about ospreys that you may not be aware of. They come to the Chesapeake Bay area around March, late March, April. They may fly from Venezuela for 40 straight hours. And they do it because they have the ability to close one eye and shut down half their brain and let that side sleep for a few hours. Then open that eye and do the same thing with the other eye. It's kind of like Virginia drivers, I think, sort of. No offense to Christine Baldwin, who lived in Virginia, but now is a proud Marylander. this was kind of cool because the symbol of Columbia, Maryland happens to be the peepal tree sculpture down at Lake Kittamakundi. And people are walking by it, not looking up. I look up and there's a hawk perched on the sculpture. You know, I don't think nature is really on a lot of people's minds. And this was an interesting story. Somebody told me there used to be a CompUSA in Columbia, and it was off of, I think, Snowden River Parkway. Behind it was a big valley and a hill, and there was a great horned owl's nest there, and you could get the same level as the nest by going up the hill, but you're across the valley from it. So very rarely have I gotten great horned owls in, in Columbia, but owls don't build nests. They do build little homes, but usually it's in a hole in a tree, or if you see it in a nest, it's an abandoned hawk's nest. They don't build their own because their beaks are too small to carry big enough twigs to build a nest. So there was a sad part to this story because I photographed this. I went over a couple times a week for a couple weeks. And then one day, a giant gust of wind had come up and the owl had had babies. So this is what I talk about. You see death. And this is one of the dead owlets that had been blown out of the tree. Mama great horned owl stayed for 2 weeks to make sure vultures didn't eat her babies. It was amazing, amazing protective behavior. When I post on Facebook, I post a couple photos. I don't get to tell the stories behind them. This isn't the angle with Sushi Sono, but that hawk that was fishing, this was the piling that he landed on with the fish. Why don't we stop for a minute and take some questions? So do I hit stop share now? What do I do to get people back up here, Lisa?
Yes, if you stop share. And if folks just want to
There
jump
you
in, they're
guys are.
welcome to.
Hey, Warren Hoffman, where are you? I know you got questions. Hey, Amy C., who are you? Jerry Lazarus, I recognize his name.
Bill Buchholz is asking, my specialty is insect photography with a macro lens. What would you recommend as a generally useful telephoto for photography of birds, such as your raptor images? I need to branch out to more generally appealing nature photography.
Okay, Bill, is it possible to get Bill's picture up here so I can see who I'm talking
Is
to?
he? I don't see that he's sharing his video yet. Bill, are you there? I've asked him to unmute and to show his video.
There's Warren. Oh my God. Hey, Warren. All right.
Okay,
well,
how
I'll
about
answer.
Warren? Let's add Warren. Warren may have a comment or question here.
Well, let me answer that question just in case Bill is still there. I use a Nikon AF-S 80 to 400 millimeter lens. A lot of my friends, the lens is $2,700. A lot of my friends will shoot with the Nikon 200 to 500 millimeter, which is less expensive, doesn't have as good a glass in it, but gets good photos. It's heavier. And I like to be able to back down to 80 millimeters. With that lens, you can only back down to 200 millimeters. almost any telephoto lens becomes a macro lens when you aim at an insect. It really, it's, you know, when people ask me questions like that, I say, what's your budget? Because you can go any number of ways. And you can go the used equipment market as long as you go to a reputable dealer to buy the used equipment. I have a macro lens. I have a Nikon 105mm macro, and I don't use it very much for macro photography. Macro photography is such a specialty because my zoom lens will get a dragonfly on a flower or a dragonfly or a bee or anything. A macro lens, your hand, it's called breathing, where any tiny movement of your hand takes everything out of focus. So I don't do a lot of macro photography with a macro lens. I don't need to get 6 inches away from an insect. Besides, I find that when I get 6 inches away from an insect, I'm either going to get stung or it's going to fly away. So, okay, any other questions here? I know there, Warren Hoffman, come on, speak up, Warren. Or unmute, yeah.
Hi. Hi, it's actually Warren and my wife Eileen. In terms of how do you use lighting in your photos? How do you focus on that? And did you ever use any
That's
flash?
the perfect question. I didn't pay you to ask that, but that's a question I've been waiting for somebody to ask. I am a natural light photographer. A couple of years ago, two different people begged me to shoot their weddings. And I first said no. You know, I didn't want to pull out, I've got a good flash unit. You know, wedding photography, oh, they see the photos, you forgot Uncle Charlie, you forgot to take, need that aggravation. So I use natural light. And I know any given time of day, unless, you know, you're in Alaska and it's nighttime for 6 months or something, what the sun is going to do. So the only thing I change on my camera due to light conditions is exposure compensation. So take, for instance, a bald eagle, and on a sunny day, the light is going to hit that head and blow out the whites, and you won't get the feather details unless you change your exposure compensation. And you want to go, there's a call it 0 in the middle, and then call it on the left minus, on the right plus. If you want to get the detail and not have that head blown out, you go to minus on the exposure compensation side. So you might go to minus 0.7. The nice thing about a DSLR is then you look in the LCD, I got it right, or no, I got to go to minus 1.0. Or a bird is in a dark area and you have to go to plus to bring in more light. So that's the only thing I'm adjusting. My camera is also, because I shoot shutter priority, it's adjusting the aperture itself. The other thing, for those of you who are familiar with the nomenclature of the digital age, you can shoot RAW, you can shoot JPEG. RAW is called uncompressed, and it uses up a lot of space on your card. I never shoot RAW. People can't believe it. Professional photographers say, you don't shoot RAW. How do you get those images? I shoot JPEG fine. RAW means one thing to me, a lot of editing. You have to do a lot of adjustments and editing when you shoot RAW images. Light is something, it's like riding a bicycle when you're a kid and getting the training wheels off. You go out and you start experimenting and seeing what is the sweet spot on your lens in terms of, and your camera combination in terms of exposure compensation. And I mean, I could go get one of my cameras and show you where it is on my camera, but on some cameras, it's in the menu. On some cameras, it's on the outside of the camera. And that's the only thing you'll see me moving when I'm shooting. So, and I'm thinking about putting a class together. I'm not promising anything because it's been a couple years with the pandemic. And if I do it, it's going to be proof of vaccination, and it's going to be outdoors. There's a lot of credence to post-processing, and there are ways to make a good shot great in post-processing. There aren't very many ways to make a bad shot good. But if you've got something, you're not totally happy with it, but it's in focus. There are so many. There's a program. Oh, there's several programs. Let's see which one I would suggest. My go-to program just for cropping and noise reduction is still Photoshop. And I don't pay to have Photoshop in the cloud. I don't pay a monthly fee. I still use Photoshop CS6. That's fine. I use an HDR program occasionally, and there are a lot of those out there. I use a program called Smart Photo Editor. For portraits of people, I use a program called Portrait Pro. People say, why don't you use a Mac? Why aren't you on Apple? Well, I'm so invested in PC software. It's like, why don't you use a Canon? Because I've got a Nikon. I started out with a Nikon. I started out with PCs, and they're fine. Light is the key to all of nature photography. Is light. It's light, and of course, there are other things. Is a branch in the way, and you know what? There was a branch in the way of a nesting area that these red-bellied woodpeckers were using. And I saw a guy climb up the tree and cut that branch down so that he could get better photos. And I said, you can't do that. Don't do that. What are you doing? Just to get a better photo of this woodpecker, you're destroying part of the tree. So on the conservation end, I see a lot of stuff. And at Bombay Hook, there were people who were baiting foxes to come out. They would hand feed foxes. Don't do that. Foxes should be afraid of people. They shouldn't be coming up to people. Now you drive through Bombay Hook, and if there's a fox going down the road, they'll come right up to your car. It's not right, but you can't teach everyone. It's just, there's not enough time. Plus, I don't know everyone, and I don't want to know everyone. And most of the people I don't want to know, I just don't want to know. So it's nice to see you all here and listening to me ramble. So I'll take another question, or I'll go to my own website off of.
Okay, I think Michelle has another question.
Okay.
Yeah, you told this really interesting story. Well, first of all, are all of the stories that you've been telling us as you show us the photographs, are they on the Flickr site?
No.
I really wish they were, because there's such wonderful stories to go with the photographs. And my granddaughter's already gone to sleep. And so I really want to show her these photographs. And
you know what, you can, and you can make up your own story.
well, I'll have to. But also, could you tell the story again about the Norwegian, what was it, bird on a chain?
The series of photos was called Birds on Chains. And
Birds on Chain.
I didn't get in touch with the Norwegian police.
I know, but
they got in touch by looking on Flickr and putting in keyword birds, chains, etc.
Birds on Chains.
Because the police in Norway are considered, and it probably sounds better in Norwegian than in English, the birds that hold the chain of humanity
The
together.
birds that hold the chain of humanity. Okay, that's great. No, that's really wonderful. Birds. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, and you can always, you can message me, you can friend me on Facebook. Just
I
under
don't
my-
do Facebook.
You don't do Facebook. Do you have a bunch of kindling and a blanket? Because we can do smoke signals.
Okay.
You can send me an email if you have any questions.
Okay.
And
Okay,
I'll
great.
tell everyone my email address right now, which
Okay.
is OZONI, so that's Ozoni 11, Ozoni11 at yahoo.com.
I'm sorry, at what?
Yahoo.com.
At Yahoo. Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
But
welcome.
I really wish these stories, I bet for every photo or every group of photos, you have a story, like the one about the prairie dogs. I mean, I'd love to know that story.
Well, I'm gonna go off here for 1 second and bring up and tell you another story. Let me see.
Okay.
Okay, what? I also think Bill had a question or comment.
Okay.
A couple of questions. One, my specialty is insect photography. So mostly handheld with a macro lens, but I'd like to do something that's more generally appealing. I mean, the market, the number of people who are interested in my insect photography is small. So what would you recommend as a general purpose telephoto for the shot, say, of the raptors that you showed us?
The lens I've been using for a version of the lens. What the lens originally was called the Nikon 80 to 400 millimeter. It's now called the Nikon AFS 80 to 400. It's much faster because it's got a little motor built in for autofocus. So the camera and the lens are autofocusing. So I say a minimum of 80 to 400 millimeters. If you're a Canon shooter, Canon makes a 100 to 400 millimeter lens. Nikon makes the 80 to 400 millimeter. Both are just great lenses.
I would think so. The other question I have is when you're using 400, 500 millimeter lenses, you said you do everything handheld, no tripods. How in the world do you get such clear shots? I mean, it's hard to hand. How do you handhold a camera that, with that focal length?
This is not me touting my own horn, but you've got good quarterbacks and you've got okay quarterbacks and you've got bad quarterbacks. It's just practice and the ability to hold that lens as steady as possible and fire away. Like I say, I have a harness so the lens is harnessed to my body. I don't use a tripod. It's too tough to get that direct overhead shot with a tripod. So, excuse me for scrolling while I'm talking to you. I do want to find this shot so I can tell a story behind it. And about why, it's not going to be in this. Yeah, yes, it is. Okay, here we go. This shot is called Osprey Poops a Duck.
Okay, so you need to share that one. The screen share is not.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Where did screen share go? Oh, dear.
The green button at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I'm losing. Exit, minimized. No, that's gone. I got to get off of here and see where. Now I need help.
Okay, so if you put your cursor at the bottom of the screen, it should light up.
you know, hey, Mary Jane, can you come in here and help? I've lost.
The green screen share is what we're looking for.
Okay, well, here's your thing down here.
Yeah, I can't.
So can
There,
you, okay, I can't, I'm sorry. Can you make this bigger?
that's not part of my.
This is where the screen share is, though. It's in your,
Oh,
in your
I don't know
Zoom.
how
It's in
that.
your Zoom. Can you make this smaller?
I can make. No.
No. Well, you can make it smaller, but anyway. Well, where is your Zoom? Where did it
I don't
just
know. The Zoom
go?
disappeared.
If you want to minimize other screens, you'll probably see it.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been doing that. I'm
Minimize.
minimizing, and all I've got is the video.
Where is that? Oh, there it is. Okay, so now can you make that bigger? Exit minimize video. There you go. Okay,
There
so
you
it just minimizes. There's your share screen.
Okay,
good.
now I want to go to a different website that I haven't shared yet. So the question is, how do I do that? I don't, Lisa, on my share screen,
At the bottom, you have to click share screen, the green.
it says share computer sound, optimize screen share, but it doesn't have what I want to share in this, in the
Yeah,
windows
just
here.
select yes and then continue.
So I
and
want to be
open.
able to type,
Right.
I'm sorry, what?
If you click on those and go through it, it will bring you to the share screen, I believe.
Well, okay.
There you go. You're
All right.
sharing your screen now.
So, okay, I'm
There we
gonna,
go.
okay, now we're on my website instead of Flickr. So this is a website that I pay a company called SmugMug to run this site for me. I upload the photos to it. They take 15% of every sale. And they also take $300 a year from me for me to have this. Let's see. What I want isn't coming up here. How do I move? There we go. We're going to move that. And I want my galleries. Library. Photos, videos. There they are, they're galleries. Okay. So people can go, and when I talk about birds on feeders, this is the front yard here, and you can see that we've got a red-bellied woodpecker here landing on the feeder. We've got what I call the upside down bird, white-breasted nuthatch. And we've got a wren. We've got a downy woodpecker. Got a bluebird. We get lots of bluebirds in the winter. You can see the white behind is snow. So also realize that there's a pane of glass between me and the birds. So I have to take that into consideration when I'm shooting. I don't use any filters on my lens. Why have a $3,000 lens and put a $30 piece of glass on the end of it? To me, there's no good reason, because you are making that not a $3,000 lens anymore. A lot of people use them for protection. You bang your lens. I use a lens hood that keeps me from banging the end of my lens. So sometimes you get shots like this. You've got an eastern bluebird and you've got two goldfinches and they're sharing the feeder. This is I love to be able to get the pileated woodpecker, which is the largest North American woodpecker. Those are poison ivy berries that it's getting ready to eat. Some of these you've seen, there's the shot of the mama green heron dropping the whole fish into lucky baby's beak. And she will make sure that she comes back with, and she had several fish. And over here on this side of the photo, you can see one that's flying out. There's such a frenzy of feeding. The fish has flown out of the mouth of the mother and it's hovering there. You know, sometimes I wish they would just drop them on the path I'm standing on and it's sushi time, but usually doesn't happen. So once again, you can see it. The fish is being engorged here and engorged back out. And I kind of like this. This is maybe about a 5 or 6 week old green heron, and you can tell they're babies by the fluffy feathering. So it's backlit. So you've got the light coming through those feathers, which makes for a nice photo. That's the mama leaving in the background after feeding the baby. And the babies tend to be a little clumsy. I saw this bird nesting with a bird might be 3.5 inches, but I caught it. I caught it that moment with the little piece of grass in its beak. And there he goes flying away with it. So Steve Land, you need some help there. This is interesting. We have the Robinson Nature Center here in Columbia. And one of the paths through the woods there, we discovered a pileated woodpecker nest. So what better place to shoot a pileated woodpecker? So these are the babies waiting to be fed by the adult who's come back probably with some grubs in its mouth. This is one of the adults flying out of the nest. And the interesting thing about certain nesting birds, especially cavity nesters inside of a tree, the babies, when they poop, it comes out in a white fecal sac. And the parents take the sac out of the nest and fly it away and drop it off somewhere. I mean, you're raising babies for 6-8 weeks. You don't want that nest to be full of crap. And they clean it out on a daily basis. These are the yellow crowns. It's not a great shot. This is under the Jones Falls Parkway. These are 2 adult yellow crown night herons. A swallow sitting still is a rare sight. This is a black crowned night heron, one of the visitors to Wild Lake for several months a year. I'm trying to, this was a tough shot. That's a belted kingfisher. These are some of the fastest birds and the most erratic flyers. So to be able to freeze the action, on this one, I might have moved my shutter speed to 1/2000th of a second. I'm not certain.
Michael, would you say that each breed of bird kind of has a certain type of personality?
Well, yeah. I mean, there are birds that will fight among themselves. There are birds that will fight other birds. In terms of personality, like this blue jay, I'd say 50% of the time when I hear a red-shouldered hawk and its sound is unique to it, it's not a red-shouldered hawk. It's a blue jay imitating a red-shouldered hawk. So I'm traipsing through the woods looking for this hawk and okay, it's the blue jay. I got it. So yeah, there are different personalities. Who can tell me what this bird is? Come on, some of you out there know. Okay, it's a tufted titmouse. And this is eastern bluebird, another eastern bluebird. Tough shot, that's a hummingbird in flight. I saw it on a branch and I just kept shooting until it flew. And this is interesting. Everyone here knows that there's a town, a city called York, Pennsylvania. And everyone probably knows there's not much reason to visit York, Pennsylvania. No offense to anyone from York, Pennsylvania, except there is one reason. There's a lake in the center of York called Kiwanis Lake. It's a cement pond. It's basically nothing, but every year, great egrets come and build, maybe there might be 20 great egret nests. And then black-crowned night herons come and build nests. And it's in the center of the city. So I go up there and often you'll see a baby biting the beak of the adult, hoping to get some food. Let's see. This is kind of nice to get an egret in that position flying right over you and have the sky look like that. Wow. I mean, it's like the old plane, the SST. It's there's something about birds, you know. These are two baby great egrets in York, Pennsylvania. So I guess I do have friends in Pennsylvania. And it's nice when they lift their wings, you get to see the structure, you get to see the coloring. This is at Wild Lake Dam. The cool thing about Wild Lake Dam is at the bottom of the dam is this rusted drainage pipe. And the great blue herons love this area. So they'll either land on the pipe or they'll land on the cement and they'll fish in the water below the dam because fish get swept over the dam. You know, who doesn't like baby ducks? You know, just happened upon those. I was very close on this shot. I mean, I was too close to get the entire wings in. So this is Herb from Peaches and Herb. And he wasn't happy that I was there that day, but eventually he forgave me. These are baby geese. And, you know, I try to point it out when adults are walking children around and they'll say, look at the ducks. I'll explain, these are geese, no offense. Or somebody points at a great blue heron and say, look at that swan. I'll say, not a swan. So I try to educate people when I'm out there. This is a little better shot of the yellow-crowned night heron, but there's one shot of them. And the babies, the goslings, they don't fear you. They don't know to fear me. I'm not a guy holding a shotgun. I'm not going to harm it. At least I'm not. Somebody else might, but this is a yellow-rumped warbler. There are people who just, they know every warbler, and there are hundreds of different warblers. I don't. When I see them, sometimes I have to look them up, and I've got a program on my phone called iBird Pro, and it's got every North American bird on it. And you can key in, well, it's got partial yellowtail, it's got a short beak, blah, blah, and you'll come up with a selection. It also, the cool thing is, it's got every North American bird sound on it. So if I hear a sound and I think it might be a warbler of some kind, I can listen and see. And if it's not mating season, I can call a bird down. So I can call a hawk down. Hawks, when they hear other hawks, will fly towards them most of the time. This is in Ephrata, Pennsylvania. Somebody said there's a great horned owl nest in this tree by this road in Ephrata, Pennsylvania. And I took the time and I went up there, and that's a baby great horned owl. And they look like, if you remember carnivals, you would throw balls at these, like, looks like that. There'd be in a row. You'd never knock them over because the thing to hit was only a stick in the middle, and you would go right through the fluff with the ball. But it's very cool to see babies. That's a flock of snow geese. This is a murmuration of snow geese. Believe it or not, I was about a mile from them. And they're geese, they're huge. And they do murmurate. They go in waves, and it sounds like Dover Air Force Base is near Bombay Hook. It sounds like planes taking off from Dover Air Force Base. It's amazing. The sights and sounds of nature is just. This is a lotus pod with bird. And that's a rare shot of a hummingbird sitting still. There's a park near Sparrows Point in Baltimore called North Point State Park. It's the only place in Maryland that I know is a breeding ground for a bird called the little blue heron. When it's adult, it looks like this. It's kind of blue-gray. When it's a juvenile, it's white. Oh, this is nice. This is a great blue heron with a turtle by the neck. And he did swallow the turtle whole. I didn't stick around to see what came out later, but it couldn't have been too pleasant. I don't know that the shell really disintegrates. This is a little blue heron in juvenile stage. So it's white, and people often mistake it for an egret. This is another juvenile, little blue. And yet another one. And you know when they've got one foot up like that and they're resting the other foot on a branch that they're staying put for a while. They aren't going to be flying. This is an adult with a frog. And French cuisine is very popular with herons. Well, that's another hummingbird shot. That might be one of my favorite hummingbird shots because he's just beginning to launch off of this twig. So I sat and I waited and just shot and shot and shot until the launch, because if you try to shoot at the moment of the launch, you're going to miss the shot. People think this is a red-headed woodpecker. It's a red-bellied woodpecker. It just so happens their heads are red also. That's more of the war. This was tough because the lighting wasn't good, but these are baby hawks in the nest. You can see the adult hawk here. These are red-shouldered hawks. Looks a little bit like the Lone Ranger, but it's a cedar waxwing getting ready to build a nest. And this is a shot that I also sent to the president of CA, because this is all monofilament. This is fishing line that this cedar waxwing is going to be totally tangled in. I have in my SUV, it's 3 feet when it's collapsed. It's 18 feet when it's pulled out. A steel pole that I bought at Bass Pro. It's got a loop on the end. So if line is within 18 feet of me, I can pull it out of a tree. Why fishermen don't carry that, I don't know. We get Baltimore Orioles at Walled Lake every year, which is kind of cool. A lot of Marylanders have never seen a Baltimore Oriole in person. I like emotion. You know, I could get 1,000 shots a day of birds perched, but I want to see one jumping for joy. I want to see one eating a fish. I want to see one doing something. This is a juvenile black-crowned night heron, and there's another one behind him, and that's at Kiwanis Lake in York. This is a female wood duck. The male birds tend to be more colorful. Nature makes it to attract a mate. So that's a female with a baby, wood duck. Heron landing at the dam, heron landing at the dam. This is a female Baltimore Oriole. And if you look at the nest, it's made the nest probably 40% with fishing line that is pulled out of other trees. Now, the problem with that is when the babies hatch and they fledge, meaning coming out of the nest, they drop to the ground, they don't fly, and they often don't drop to the ground because they're strangled by the fishing line. It's kind of neat you don't often get the shot of an oriole or another bird from the underside and get to see the translucence of the wings. And it's great to see them, you know, building a nest, to see a great egret flying with nesting material. It's kind of like seeing the Beatles in concert for me. This is kind of cool. It's two osprey, and the sky was totally gray. There was nothing. It was so dull that I put a different sky in. So occasionally I'll do that. And it really made the picture jump. It made these birds jump out of the photo. This is an eastern screech owl at Wakatahatchee in Florida. So either a moorhen or a purple gallinule in Florida. They're beautiful. You know, Florida birds are different than birds up here. This is in the Everglades. This is a barred owl. One of my favorite owls is the burrowing owl. They live underground. They make burrows and they live underground. If you go to Davie, Florida, it's like whack-a-mole. You'll see 4 holes and all of a sudden a bird will pop out of one. Another bird, an owl comes up and the owl goes down. And look at them. How can you not love this bird? Although it looks like it wants to attack me. I'm not sure. It's a glossy ibis. So the ibises have these long curved beaks. I'm sorry, excuse me for a minute. Oh, I didn't realize it's not, I didn't realize it was 9:23. Holy cow. You
Right,
know,
well, we could go on all night talking about
I'm
the
not going to
wonderful
do that. I'm going
photography.
to take a couple more questions
Yeah.
and then, you know, finish my beer. And
Right. Time flies when you're having fun. Who has a question or comment for Michael? Just go ahead and jump in and then we'll stop the screen share so we can see video better.
How did you,
Ah.
from the music business to photography, or were you always interested in photography? Were you always interested in nature, you know, photography?
no, you know, my real interest was music and journalism. You know, when you work as a copy boy and you're 16 and President Kennedy is assassinated, and you're 16 and working at a newspaper, you can't imagine what that was like. I had to take off school several days, although schools closed after his assassination, but to work and to drive reporters different places. And then I was asked to use my car in President Johnson's inaugural parade to drive 3 reporters. And I said, I can't do that. I've got an Alfa Romeo. It only has 2 seats. So I borrowed my mother's car. So really, it was music and journalism and meeting a lot of great people. I think my book talks a lot about that. Photography was always there, but really didn't rear its head until I moved to Columbia. And, you know, the music business spits people out when they hit age 50. And you know what? I decided I'm going to go out on my own, you know, rather than covered with slime. And I did.
And folk rock and world music is not, I don't think, is so much the age thing is that important. But we can talk about that forever. So, and I know
And for those of you who don't know, Ken is a very talented music journalist himself, mostly covering the British folk and folk rock scene, and I've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah. And now I've heard stuff that's you know, kind of takes that template from places like Italy, Germany, Sweden, all over.
Okay, who else out there might want to share an insight or a question?
I'll ask a question, Michael, about owls. I really have a special thing for them. Is there a particular time of day that's best to find an owl?
Well, you tend to hear them at night.
Right.
So trying to find them at night is very difficult.
You seem to be able to find them during the day.
Well, a lot of that is there's a sharing amongst professional nature photographers. I'll let you know about this nest. Let me know what you find. Don't tell anyone else.
Got it.
The worst thing is if you publicly say on a post on Facebook or somewhere else, this nest is in X spot. It just, you know, the host has asked you to start my video.
Start your video. Sorry, I accidentally clicked on the wrong thing.
You know.
No, I'm not going out to advertise anything, you know that.
No, here's the thing.
But I would love to actually see it for myself.
15 years, I've taken over 1 million photographs. Okay.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I've got 8 external hard drives. What am I ever going to do with these? Owls are the rarest bird for me to find. So it's not like someone will tell me there's a great horned owl nest in Ephrata, Pennsylvania. So I'll drive to it. So I very rarely have I just spotted an owl. I spot them in the Everglades. I know they're there. I know what kind of trees they hang out in. I know that most owls in Maryland are either going to be in an abandoned hawk nest or in a hole in a tree. And so,
we've seen them at Lake Frank.
I'm sorry, say again?
We've seen barn owls in Lake Frank.
Oh yeah,
we back up to Lake Frank. So and the way we've seen them is you hear them rustle, the noise that an owl makes.
Who's talking?
Warren.
Warren. Hi, Warren.
Hi.
Yeah,
they make a lot of noise though. So when you hear this huge noise that they're making with their wings, that's what's caught our attention when we've seen them around the lake.
Do they sound similar to a grouse?
This was more just the size of their wings making that noise.
But isn't that the same as with a grouse?
Yes, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not
like a drumming.
It's more the fluff.
I think it's the rustling of their wings hitting the branches because of their span being so wide.
We have a large holly tree, and I know that he's in there because I can hear him when he's flapping his wings because it rustles inside this holly tree. So I know he's there, and he's actually flown into our garage a couple times.
I think you're living in Leisure World, so there's not going to be a lot of owls there.
But I hear them when I walk at night, late at night.
Yeah, that's
Over by so there, I think they might be somewhere or someone is living over on the golf course.
Well, golf courses are good places for owls. A lot of the burrowing owls in Florida make their burrows on golf courses, and they're protected species. So you'll go see a golf course and there'll be 4 stakes in the ground with yellow tape surrounding it so that nobody falls, trips and breaks a leg in the owl burrow, and also to protect people from fooling with the owls.
Yeah.
Michael, do you not agree with me that Christine bears an uncanny resemblance to Sandy Denny?
You would be more familiar with that. You know, you've met Sandy.
Yeah.
But Christine bears resemblance to a lot of British rock stars.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, a non question. Hey, Michael, it's 9:30. We should probably wrap. And I think you're right. So unless somebody has something burning, I'm going to bid you all a fond adieu. And don't forget, my book is Fast Forward, Play, and Rewind.
It's a great book. Buy it.
Highly recommend it.
Barnes and Noble, Amazon, blah, blah, blah. My website, michaelobermanphotography.com. It's Giving Tuesday. Buy something. Contribute to the Silver Spring Town Center so they can continue doing this wonderful